Hi, everyone. This is Abhishek from ShakeTheCosmos.com. My guest today is Chris. Chris is an experienced sales and business development leader. He's worked at top companies like Salesforce, Microsoft, and Dropbox. He led cross-functional teams to help Fortune 500 enterprises meet their technology goals and successfully negotiated numerous 6- and 7-figure deals. Chris is also a Berkeley MBA graduate. Go Bears. He's
Go
a
Bears.
marathon runner and a triathlete. His currently passion project is writer for knowyourbest.com, a recently launched personal growth blog, which I love, that it provides personal, inspirational articles and tips on goal achievement, personal development, and success. Chris is based in San Francisco. All right. Thanks so much for joining me, Chris, today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Abhishek.
All right. So we're going to jump right into it. And I consider you a learning expert. And I would love to kind of hear a little bit more about your own journey so we can set the context and love to poke into how you got so good at it.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on the podcast, Abhishek. And I see that we're somewhat matching as well. You got more of the floral print. I have the checkers here. But yeah. So yeah, I'll just go into a little bit about my story, and hopefully it will help your listeners kind of understand where I got to where I was and why I'm doing what I'm doing now in terms of writing for personal growth and success. So I started off in a very kind of typical like suburban family. My mom and dad met when my dad was out of the army. He went to school off a GI Bill loan, and essentially, they bought a house together in San Jose, and so everything was going really well. It was like the white picket fence situation, 2 kids and a dog. And they owned a business together in real estate where essentially it was a partnership, and my dad's partners screwed him over and basically took the money and took the business. And he was so defeated by that, having the pressure of having a family that depended on him, and risking having to lose his house and all the things he owned. He turned to alcohol, unfortunately, to cope with that. And part of that alcoholism was he acted out in very kind of emotional, erratic ways, eventually putting his hands on my mom and beating her at one point. And so at the age of 4 years old, I saw my parents divorce in a very kind of harsh way. And so my mom took full custody of my brother and I. And I, part of it internally was I blamed myself for that marriage ending, I think in ways that I didn't quite understand at the time. And so I was, always I acted out in all kinds of weird ways. I think when I was going to school, I, would get in trouble all the time. I was like skipping class, getting in detention. I was kind of a permanent fixture in the detention room. And I later found out that I had undiagnosed ADD as well. And so there's all these things at play where I had a really rough experience in school. I ended up getting kicked out of high school. I was told by my mother, who is an educator, she was a teacher, was told by my vice principal of the school that basically I'd be in prison one day, right? And so, yeah, it was really rough. I mean, I grew up in like with not a lot of money, barely had enough money for like food, and we lived in a trailer park, so I was sometimes like made fun of at school as like trailer trash and whatnot. And so I ended up going to a remedial high school in my senior year. And one day a teacher pulled me aside, and he knew my background. He knew why I was there, but he thought that, I was capable of a little bit more than my background would have suggested. And so he took me to the library and gave me this book, which was Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. It's one of his first books. I remember reading that book, and I read the entire thing in like a day or two. And Tony talks about in this book how he came from a really rough childhood too. And one day he's in a helicopter going to one of his events that he's speaking at, and he looks at this traffic jam down below. And this traffic jam is from people trying to get into his event. And he's like, he couldn't believe that how much of his life had changed over the course of a couple decades. And it made me think that if I was able to change my mindset, that I could, have more success, and I could actually be a winner. And so after I read that book, I continued on this journey of the past 15 years, reading as much about like personal growth and success in business as I possibly could. I ended up getting a 4-year degree with honors, and I had never even gotten like a B before, right? Like a C was something back in high school, I would have thought to be a miracle. I ended up later getting accepted into Berkeley. Of course, that's how we met. And one thing that happened was, my dad, who I hadn't seen very often since I was a kid, he ended up passing, right before my graduation to Berkeley, which is really tough because part of my motivation was I wanted to see him and my family to see me as someone who had kind of turned things around. But I what I did for him is he was a lifelong smoker, so I quit smoking cold turkey because I smoke cigarettes as well. I started running, and I ended up doing a marathon for my dad. And raising money for the American Stroke Association. So it kind of came full circle there. And, I went from like hating myself, like kind of the family I came from, to finally finding some degree of acceptance. And the last thing that I'll mention was, when I was going back to school, like one of the things that I really loved was creative writing. Like that was one of the classes where I found that if I enjoyed the subject, I could be really successful in it and actually get a good grade. And so I took that reading that I did, the journeys along the way, along with that writing, to creating this KYB blog, Know Your Best. And maybe we'll talk about that later on, but it's all about.
I really appreciate this. I appreciate just listening and understanding and you sharing this, your own journey. And it's, I've, I guess a journey of transformation almost where, and you put it so succinctly, but it's covering so many different years of your life. And along the way, it sounds like you've developed tools, and now you're also giving back through knowyourbest.com. So I guess would love to sort of hear, you mentioned, a book and a mentor that you met. But what are some, self-development tools that you started utilizing along the journey as well?
Yeah, I think one of the things it starts with is setting proper goals, right? And the first thing before I started setting goals was to think about having the right mindset going into it, right? So what is, Simon Sinek is famous for, starting with why is his book. And I think that's goes for businesses and also in your personal life, that, what is the ultimate reason? And oftentimes I think the most powerful ones are not even for yourself. It's not for like a personal egotistical type of goal. It's like, what can I do with this new position or wealth or whatever it might be to improve the lives of people around you? So I think that's what really motivates people. And so I think with the goal setting, it's like starting with the mindset and then using SMART goals, essentially, where you're going to go through and make sure that you have a proper time frame around it and that you're very specific in terms of what you want.
And I'm trying to remind myself, SMART stands for situation, measure, action.
So it's a specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So I think, let's say your goal was like, I want to be rich, is like your express goal. So, you can make that more specific and say, I want to be monetarily rich, right? So I want to be rich in money versus, tradition or character. And then to measure it, you would say, well, okay, I'm going to set a specific figure on it. Like, let's say you said, I want to have $1 million or $1 billion in my bank account. Then you want it to be attainable, right? And that's where you'd go and say, well, $1 billion, that's like 0.00002% of the population.
Yeah, I got to figure out like how many zeros there are first.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so then maybe you'd say, I want to make $1 million, right? Because that's a much higher likelihood. And then, you want it to be relevant to your goals as well, right? So maybe it's not the money that you're necessarily looking for, it's that financial freedom, right? Because you want to be able to travel the world, or you want to do something that you're really passionate about. And then you want to set that time, that T there is for the time based. So maybe you say that I want to do that within 5 years or 10 years. And then you would let your, saving and investing strategy dictate that based on that deadline.
I really appreciate that. I mean, makes me think of it's even if someone wants $1 billion, they're setting a vision, but then also kind of coming back and making it more real through this type of goal setting that you're mentioning. Um, one technique I'm a big fan of myself is taking something like, hey, I want $1 million, writing that down, and then underneath that writing, I have $1 million, and just kind of making a mental shift of what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the emotion behind it.
Yeah, I'll do that with affirmations on a daily basis, like where one of those will be like I'm healthy, wealthy, and happy, right? And I mean, I guess you could get more specific with it, but I've heard methods where people will walk around with $100 bills, $1,000 in their wallet. And I wouldn't maybe suggest that, depending upon. I'm in San Francisco. There's parts of the city you might want to do that, might not want to do that in, but I've heard people that will, once a month, when they're on their journey to success, they'll get like a 5-star hotel or something like that. And, maybe if it's just for a day, just to experience what that's like, right? So the more tangible you can make kind of your goals and have them in front of you, the better. I've heard people that if they have a dream home, they'll take a picture of it and they'll put it somewhere where they live, maybe by their bedside. And so they see that every single day. It seems it seems more tangible. It seems more real.
I really appreciate that. And then I know you've kind of digested many of these things into an ebook as well, which people can download from knowyourbest.com. Um, so I kind of would love to sort of digest into. I know you mentioned 11 strategies in there, but what is your own favorite technique? Um,
Yeah. So the one that I like the most is called spaced repetition. So essentially, they've done studies that have shown like, you forget, high percentage of something if you just read it once, right? So this is why like cramming for a test isn't super effective, right? Because there's no kind of time delay between the different.
and you call this space what? Sorry, just so
Yeah, it's called spaced repetition.
space repetition. All right.
Yeah. So there was a study by Tel Aviv University that showed that like reactivation induced learning strengthened the students' learning curve. So they're reactivating parts of the brain as they study, and by restudying these topics at specific intervals, you increase kind of the stickiness in your mind. So one thing you can do is like a lot of apps nowadays, like for studying, Quizlet's a super popular one. I think like half of high school students actually use that. Anki's another, and they actually have spaced repetition built into their apps where what you'll do is basically you study something once and then you'll study it again in a week, and then like 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and the more times you repeat that, the more it gets kind of entrenched in your long-term memory.
And
So
then
that's
is the key as you're studying kind of having some space in between? So like you study it for a week and then you got to take a little bit of a break, or is that?
Yeah, exactly. So you wouldn't just like cram everything once, and the other aspects of that are, you want to continue to test on things that are kind of your weak spots, right? So that's another thing those apps will often do, right? Is they'll show you, okay, what are the things that you're missing, right? And so you can, because a lot of people kind of fool themselves into like, practicing the things they already know, right? Because it's comfortable. They get that positive reinforcement when they get the answer right. So it's like focusing on the things that you're struggling with, having that spaced repetition where you continue to study it. And I think that you can also, another method that works pretty well when you're studying is like the Pomodoro method, which was like famous in the 90s. Everyone got these like tomato shaped timers, but the guy who invented it was like, was Italian. And you do like 25 minutes of studying on, and then you do 5 minutes of off, where you give yourself a break, basically a mental break for your mind to kind of piece together everything you've just learned. And then your focus definitely improves as you do kind of these intervals.
I really appreciate that. I mean, and especially in the changing business environment. I mean, I'm thinking about my own, like my own job, I have to always learn new things all the time. Or if I, when I switched companies from a life science company to a medical device company, and this space repetition, I think it's wish kind of had known about that actually.
Yeah,
Or maybe doing it inadvertently. I don't know it.
yeah, it's that's a big one, right? And that's where I think the importance of using really effective learning techniques comes in, right? Because we talk about this at Berkeley Haas, is this idea of being a lifelong learner, and I think that's certainly true, right? That throughout people's careers, they're not staying at one company for the entirety, like maybe our parents and our grandparents might have. So you're constantly changing, perhaps industries, right, and sectors. So you're having to learn different products, different competitors, different processes, and then you think about all these disruptive technologies that are coming in, AI and machine learning and all this. Like, it's going to continue to change at such a rapid pace. The amount of information that we're taking in has gone up significantly since like 20 or 30 years ago.
Totally. I mean, it's the yeah. It seems like, yeah, information is there's so much information out there, and also like the way people are processing it seems to have changed as well. Just how I had a video recording recently of cooking video that was like an hour long. And I have a digital marketer. She works on some stuff, and she took that an hour long video, made it 8 minutes. And I was like, wow, that's where the young people, that's how they're processing it nowadays.
Yeah, it's very fast paced, right? It's like these short snippets. Yeah, I think I scrolled past that one. I'm gonna have to check out that video. You're making some chana masala.
Yeah, that's right. Chana masala. It's probably the most popular video right now on Shake the Cosmos. And I think, about processing, and I guess makes me think about like health as well. And how because there is more information out there, like how does health play a role in learning as well?
It plays a huge role. I mean, so scientists estimate that the brain is about three-quarters water. And so just minor dehydration has been shown to reduce a person's attention span, their memory, as well as their motor skills. And research has also shown that sleep helps us use our memories more adaptively. And so it's really important to stay hydrated, really important to get adequate rest,
And
7 or 8
these are
hours.
like simple things. They sound simple, but like,
Hard to do.
um, what's that?
Hard to do
Right.
consistently. Yeah.
Totally.
So
And what I think about it too, like you don't need $1 million to go to sleep, and also just drink water.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, these are things that anybody can do, and there's little tricks that I'll do. I know a lot of people have like the large jugs that they'll carry around. There's also apps that you can download that will basically remind you every hour. I actually just got one, a water reminder app on iOS, free app. It'll just tell you, drink some more water, and then um, it'll show you throughout the day how much you should have drank. For sleeping, like I recommend like eye mask, earplugs. If you're in a city like me, you probably heard a street sweeper just come by earlier, of course, right when we started recording. So just that can help reduce the light that wakes you up, as well as the noise.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, appreciate kind of going back to the basics on this, and the power of goal setting, the power of staying healthy. Um, the other thing is, well, what about the mood? How does oh, okay, well, people say I'm just not in the mood for something. How does that play in learning, or is there a way to shift that as well?
Yeah. So, well, when I say mood, when I think about mood, I think about like attitude. And so, if you're tired, if you're irritated, if you're stressed, that affects your attentiveness, right? So that's why getting adequate sleep, doing like a meditation practice, like I appreciate that we did earlier, can really help a lot. And it's also your environment as well. So, you know, you want to be very present when you study. You don't want to get sidetracked by random thoughts. So there's Chrome extensions and apps you can download that will block social media sites, right? We're all guilty of constantly checking those. Um,
I heard one time, like this is somebody on a Craigslist hired somebody to like slap them every time they've been on like a website just to reinforce.
I've heard like punishment based things like that, like where it's like, oh, if I don't accomplish a goal, like you're gonna have to donate $100 automatically to like this political person I dislike. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
What is your perspective on that sort of punishment versus reinforcement when it comes to learning? Or is it kind of like people each to their own? It depends.
I've never tried that to be honest with you, but I do think that on the other end, using the carrot can be really effective. Like where you know, if you really enjoy like a gourmet cup of coffee, you know, maybe like when I'm writing for my blog, I'll write for a couple hours uninterrupted, and if I get there, if I get to my word count, I'll like reward myself with that. So I think little things like that, you know, giving yourself like some dessert or something if that's what you know you're craving, or whatever it is, right? You know, maybe watching like 30 minutes of TV after you've done whatever goal or study session for the day that you have. But yeah, I haven't tried the you know some pain based ones, but I know that they can be effective. I mean, there's apps out there where you can do that, where people will hold you accountable, right? You set the goal for the community, and you have to donate a certain amount of money if you're not able to reach your goal. So I would encourage people to try that, and that's a big part of this, right? Try a lot of things out and see what works best for you.
So, I mean, and I appreciate, I know we're only covering a few things from your ebook, which people can get on knowyourbest.com. But like, love to sort of, the big thing right now is morning routine. People are just staying at home a lot. I'm having to shift my own morning routine. Um, what is your morning routine, or what are you aspiring for?
Yeah. So I think it's super important to have a routine, right? It sets the tone for the day. And if you look at almost any successful person, they have some sort of routine that works for them. You know, I think some are pretty basic, like setting the same time every day to wake up, right? Having a consistent go to sleep and wake up schedule. In the morning, you know, get fresh, get light immediately, right? Like open the curtains. That'll help you wake up faster. A lot of people make their bed every morning. I think that was something that was popularized by Naval Admiral William McRaven,
I,
the
I
commencement speech.
I remember watching this show. What is that show? Like people have to guess like top something, and then like top three things that are popular. But anyways, like one thing, like yeah, it's a habit a lot of people want to do, but they cringe. They don't do is making the bed.
Yeah, it takes like 15 seconds, but I don't. It's like folding clothes, right? It's like it's like the last thing you want to get around to, or doing dishes. But I have this routine that I got from this book by Hal Elrod. It's called A Miracle Morning, and he has this routine called Savers, and it stands for silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and scribing. So you know, silence is the meditation, like we did earlier. You know, 5 to 10 minutes of meditation or prayer, and then affirmations. So there's recorded ones on YouTube that you can get where it's just these I am statements. You know, I am wise, I'm healthy, wealthy. Getting like 5 minutes of that in your head. You can do that while you like make breakfast if you want, or you know, multitask. And then visualization. This is like you can use a visualization board where maybe you'll have your dream house and your um, I don't know, your dream girlfriend or dream boyfriend or whatever it is, right? And like make that present in your mind. Then the exercise, right? Not everyone can get to this in the morning if you have a more lengthier exercise routine, but even doing like some push-ups or pull-ups in the morning, or a little bit of cardio, you know, jumping jacks, whatever it is. And then reading something or listening to something positive or informative for like 5 to 10 minutes. And then lastly, scribing. There's these 5 minute you know, daily journal apps where you'll just put a few things you're grateful for, maybe set some intention that you have for the day. So you can do that entire routine in, you know, 30 to 45 minutes. I know it's difficult for some people if they have a job where they have to get up super early, or if they have kids, but if you can fit those 6 things into your day, or even a few of those in the morning, I think it will set your day off to a really good start.
I appreciate that. I'm going to be looking at, and I appreciate that how it's kind of centered around just taking care of yourself. And through these things, it's not like they're set of activities, because everybody will have different things they do
Yeah.
to exercise. Like I just go for a walk in the morning sometimes, but somebody might need to go boxing. Um,
Yeah.
so
Depends on how tough of a job you have, right? You might need to really let go of some stress, or maybe if you're just fresh out of a relationship, you gotta punch a bag in the morning.
oh, totally. I may want to break a bag. Um, Well, I know we covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate you sharing. As we're wrapping up here, um, any last minute shout outs or anything you would like to share with the folks listening?
No, I would just say, thanks for everyone who's tuning in today, and we really appreciate it. Um, you mentioned this ebook, 11 strategies to learn anything faster. So I don't think of that as much of an ebook as kind of like a free guide that I'm giving out to email subscribers. So it's essentially, if you want to get weekly updates from my blog that talks about like personal growth, habits, routines, all the good stuff, some of the good stuff that we talked about today. You'll be part of my email subscriber list, and then you'll get that for free. And then I'll be giving out more free things as we go. But that's the main one. Yeah, knowyourbest.com. And reach out to me, and let me know like how I can help you. If you have any questions, I see this as kind of a community where, I'm learning from you, and folks, everyone's kind of learning from each other. So I think that's the best way to do it.
I appreciate that. And I'm a subscriber myself of knowyourbest.com. Well, Chris, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Abhishek.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening. Please hit the subscribe button. We'll be back next week